The archive did not make mistakes. That was the first thing archivist Leth Varon had been taught when he was still a junior clerk in the lower stacks of the Dominion Record Corps. Not rarely, not almost never, never. Every civilization cataloged by the Dominion passed through the same process: observation, classification, integration, or removal. And once a record was sealed, it became permanent, immutable, untouchable. So when the screen in front of him flickered, just once, and a new entry appeared inside a closed extinction file, Leth did not react immediately. He simply stared, because reacting would imply he believed what he was seeing, and that was not possible. 31 standard cycles ago, cross-referenced across military, legal, and cultural archives, locked, finalized. Except now, there was a new line. Leth blinked slowly, then leaned closer. His fingers hovered over the console but did not touch it, because touching it would make it real. "System," he said quietly, "verify entry integrity." The machine responded instantly. Entry verified, no corruption detected. That was worse. Trace origin. Signal origin unregistered, outer sector relay chain, obsolete format. Leth frowned. Obsolete? That meant old, very old. How old? There was a pause, a longer pause than usual. Then, format classification pre-resolution era. Leth felt something cold settle in his chest. Pre-resolution meant one thing, one very specific thing: human. He leaned back slowly in his chair. That wasn't possible. There were no human systems left, no human fleets, no human transmissions. The Dominion had ensured that, carefully, thoroughly, completely. Open the addendum. For a fraction of a second, the system hesitated, then complied. The screen shifted. The archive entry expanded. And at the very bottom, beneath 31 years of finalized history, a single line appeared. "We are still here." No signature, no encryption key, no data packet. Just that sentence. Leth stared at it for a long time, long enough that the silence in the archive chamber began to feel different. He checked the timestamp again. Current, not delayed, not replayed, live. Run linguistic analysis. Language confirmed, standard human trade dialect. Of course it was. Simple, direct, no flourish, no fear. Leth's throat felt dry, because he understood something immediately, something that the system could not process. This was not a distress signal. Distress signals ask for help. This didn't. This was a statement, and statements were dangerous. He flagged the entry for supervisory review. Protocol demanded it. Then he sat there, waiting, watching the screen as if it might change again. It didn't. But something else did. Across the Dominion, in monitoring stations, in legal hubs, in quiet places where old frequencies were still logged out of habit, a handful of systems registered the same anomaly. A signal. Weak. Old format. Barely worth attention. Most ignored it, because why wouldn't they? But a few did not. Outer listening post, the Rennie Compact territory. The station was small, underfunded, quiet. The kind of place where nothing important ever happened. Observer Kira Sen had been assigned there for 6 years, long enough to stop expecting change. She was reviewing routine signal logs when the anomaly flagged. Low priority, obsolete format, probably noise. She almost dismissed it. Almost. But something about the timestamp made her pause. "Replay the signal," she said. The audio came through as static at first, then, just barely, a voice. "Still here." Kira froze. She rewound it, played it again, increased gain, filtered noise. "We are still here." Her hands went still over the console. She didn't need translation software, didn't need classification tools, didn't need confirmation, because unlike the Dominion, the Vareni Compact had never fully closed their human files. They had kept copies, quietly, unofficially, illegally, depending on who you asked, and Kira had read them, all of them. She knew what a human voice sounded like, and this was one. She stood up slowly, heart beating faster than it should. Confirm source. Untraceable. Signal hopping across deprecated relay nodes. Of course it was. Whoever sent it knew exactly how to stay hidden. Kira stared at the waveform, at the tiny, fragile-looking signal that should not exist. Then she did something that would absolutely cost her career if anyone important noticed. She copied it, and sent it not to her superiors, not to the Dominion, but to a private channel, and list of addresses that had not been active in decades. Old contacts, old observers, old believers. The message she attached was simple. They're not gone. Back in the Dominion archive, Leth's console pinged. Priority override. Supervisor access. The screen shifted. A new presence entered the system. Senior Archivist Darren Val. "Explain the anomaly," Darren said without greeting. Leth swallowed, then gestured to the screen. Darren read the line. Once. Twice. His expression did not change, but his voice did, just slightly. "This is not possible." "I am aware," Leth said. "Then explain why it exists." "I cannot." Silence. Darren stepped closer to the console, ran his own verification, checked the logs, the timestamps, the signal path. Everything came back clean. That was the problem. "If this is authentic," Darren said slowly, "then the resolution is no longer legally stable." Leth nodded. He had realized that too, because under Dominion law, extinction status was not symbolic. It was legal, and if even one verified individual survived, everything changed. Territorial claims, resource ownership, historical rulings, military justification, all of it. "Seal this file," Darren said. "Restrict access to Tier 1 clearance only." Leth hesitated. "Sir, if this spreads—" "It will not," Darren said sharply. Another pause, then quieter. "We will handle it." Leth looked at the screen again, at the single line that had somehow pierced 31 years of certainty. "We are still here." He had a strange feeling, one he couldn't quite name. Not fear, something worse. The sense that something long buried had just opened its eyes. Somewhere in deep space, the ship did not have a name anymore, not officially, not in any registry that still mattered. But once, a long time ago, it had been called Resolute Dawn. Now it drifted between stars, cold, dark, invisible. Inside, one human sat at a console older than most Dominion officers. Commander Elias Rook did not smile. He did not celebrate. He didn't even move much. He simply watched the return signals. Tiny acknowledgments, faint echoes, hidden responses. One, then another, then more. For 27 years, he had sent the signal. Once every cycle. Same format, same patience. No response. Until now. He leaned back slightly, closed his eyes for just a moment. Not relief. Not yet. Because this wasn't victory. This was confirmation. He opened his eyes again, looked at the console,
at the blinking indicators that told him something had finally changed. "They heard it," he said quietly. Then, after a pause, "They all heard it." He reached for the navigation controls. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, he entered a course, not away.
The Dominion did not panic. It adjusted. That was how senior archivist Darren Vall explained it during the closed session, held 3 levels beneath the public archive floor. No recordings, no external links, no witnesses below Tier 1 clearance. "Containment is not fear," Darren said, hands folded behind his back. "It is procedure." Around him, 6 officials from different branches of Dominion governance stood in a tight circle of projected data. Military, legal, communications, cultural oversight, all staring at the same line. "We are still here." Fleet Liaison Tarek spoke first. "Signal strength?" "Weak," Leth answered from his console, "but deliberate, routed through obsolete relay chains. Whoever sent it understands our monitoring blind spots. Origin? Still untraceable." That earned silence. Not confusion, not disbelief. Silence meant they understood the implication. "This is a survivor," Tarek said finally. "No," Darren replied. Everyone looked at him. "This is not a survivor," Darren said. "This is someone who wants to be found." That was worse, because survivors hide, but someone who wants to be found has a reason. "Options?" another official asked. Tarek didn't hesitate. "Deploy search groups, sweep outer sectors, locate and neutralize." Leth felt the word land like a weight. Neutralize. Darren shook his head. "No." That got everyone's attention. "You will not deploy fleets," Darren continued. "You will not escalate visibility. You will not validate the signal by reacting to it." Tarek frowned. "If it spreads, it already has," Darren said. And that was the real problem. Verini Compact, Outer Systems Relay Net. Kira did not sleep. She had replayed the signal 47 times, cleaned it, enhanced it, layered it against archived human voice samples. It matched. Not perfectly. Time and distance distorted things, but enough. More than enough. She wasn't alone anymore. Her private network had responded, not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, like something waking up. 3 confirmations within the first hour, 7 by the third, 12 by the end of the cycle. Old observers, independent analysts, even one former Dominion clerk who had quietly defected years ago, all saying the same thing in different ways. "We received it too." Kira leaned back in her chair, staring at the growing list. This wasn't an anomaly anymore. This was a pattern, and patterns meant intention. She opened a secure channel, typed a message, paused, deleted it, typed again. Finally, she sent, "If you can hear this, send again. Use same format. We're listening." Then she sat there, waiting for something that logic told her should not come. Deep space. The resolute dawn. Elias Rook watched the network bloom, not visually, not on any single screen, but in fragments, tiny pings, relay confirmations, signal echoes. For 27 years, nothing. Now, noise. Beautiful, chaotic, undeniable noise. He adjusted the transmitter, shifted frequency slightly, not enough to lose them, just enough to test. Then he sent again. No speech this time, just a pulse. Then another, then a third. Old format, simple, primitive, human. He leaned forward slightly, watching, waiting, and then responses. Not one, many, scattered, uneven, weak, but there. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. He had imagined this, planned for it, built entire contingencies around the possibility, but imagination and reality were not the same. "There you are," he whispered.
Dominion monitoring grid. Signal spike detected. The room went still. Leth turned sharply toward the console. Where? Multiple locations, the system replied. Low frequency band, obsolete format. Darren stepped forward. Display. The screen filled with data points. 1 became 3. 3 became 9. 9 became... Stop, Tarek said quietly, because he saw it. They all did. This wasn't a single transmission anymore. It was a network. Dormant, hidden, now active. How many? Darren asked. Leth hesitated, ran the numbers twice. Confirmed signals, 21. Silence. Then, estimate? Tarek pressed. Leth swallowed. More. That word changed everything, because one survivor was a problem, but more than one, that was a population, and under covenant law, population meant rights. Shut it down, one of the officials said. Darren didn't respond immediately. He was staring at the map, at the scattered points lighting up across sectors the Dominion had long stopped watching closely. They were hiding, he said softly. No one argued. They stayed silent for 30 days. He turned slightly, and we never noticed. That part hurt. Verini Compact, listening post. Kira's console lit up so fast she almost missed the first response. Then another, then 3 at once. Her breath caught. They weren't just hearing the signal, they were answering. She opened one, static, weak signal. Then a voice. Anyone? Respond, please. Another channel, different voice, different accent. Still running dark. Thought I was the only one. Kira's hands trembled slightly. She switched channels again. Been broadcasting for years. Never thought. She stopped, because suddenly this wasn't theory anymore. This wasn't archived history. This was happening, now, live. She opened a wideband response channel, overriding her station's standard protocol. This is Verini Compact Listening Post 7, she said, voice steady despite everything. We hear you. You are not alone. Silence. Then a flood. Deep space. Resolute dawn. Elias listened. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt. He just listened. Voices, dozens, different tones, different ages, different conditions, all calm, some shaking, some barely holding together, all human. He let it run for a long time, long enough for them to hear each other, not just him, each other. That mattered more. Finally, he keyed the channel. The noise quieted, not instantly, but gradually, like a room realizing someone important had started speaking. This is Commander Elias Rook, he said. No rank mattered anymore, no fleet, no command structure, but some things you held on to anyway. I've been transmitting for 27 years. Silence, complete this time. I didn't know how many of you were left. A pause. I needed to find out. He looked at the signal map, at the growing constellation of human voices. I have a plan. That got their attention. He could feel it. I'm going to need all of you to stay exactly where you are. A murmur across the channels. Confusion. Tension. Do not move, he repeated. Do not power up beyond minimum. Do not reveal yourselves. Why? Someone asked. Elias didn't answer immediately. Because the truth mattered. Because the moment we become visible, he glanced at the Dominion signal interference beginning to creep into the outer bands. They will come looking for us. Silence again. Then quieter. They've already started. Dominion command layer. They're organizing. Tarek didn't bother hiding the urgency anymore. Multiple signals, coordinated timing, shared frequency. This is not random. Darren nodded slowly. Yes. He turned to Leth. Can you isolate a primary source? Leth worked the console, filtered signals, tracked timing delays, mapped relay paths, then stopped. Yes. The room leaned in. One signal is central, Leth said. Others are responding to it. Location? Tarek asked. Leth exhaled slowly. Deep outer sector. Unregistered space. Of course it was. Tarek straightened. Now we deploy. Darren didn't argue this time, because now it wasn't just a signal, it was a leader, and leaders change things. "Send a single vessel," Darren said. Tarek frowned. "One?" Darren replied, quietly. "No fleet, no announcement." A pause. "Find them." And this time, no one misunderstood what that meant. Deep space, resolute dawn. Elias watched the Dominion wake up. It was subtle, barely visible, but after 27 years of studying them, he knew the signs. Signal shifts, surveillance sweeps, background noise changing frequency. "They're looking," he said softly. Then he smiled, just a little. Good, because this was the part he had been waiting for. He reached for a different console, one he hadn't used in years. Not communication, not navigation, something else, something built slowly, carefully, over decades. A system designed for one purpose, not to hide, not anymore, but to mislead. They think they're hunting one ship. He activated it. Let's give them something to chase. Across the void, 10 false signatures bloomed into existence.
The Dominion vessel was not designed for war. That was important. It could fight, of course. Every Dominion ship could. But the Vigilant Array-class Scout was built for something else entirely. Observation. Tracking. Quiet correction of small problems before they became large ones. Captain Riltoven preferred it that way. Wars were loud, messy, unpredictable. This was supposed to be simple. "Confirm target lock," he said, standing at the center of the command deck. "Signal acquired," his sensor officer replied. "Human signature, matches archived profile variants within acceptable range." Rel nodded once. There it was. Proof. After 31 years, proof that something had slipped through. He studied the display. One ship, small, running low output. Not impressive, not threatening. "Single survivor," someone muttered. Rel didn't answer, because something about that felt wrong. "Distance? Closing. Intercept in 8 minutes." Too easy. That was the problem. Rel had been in command long enough to recognize when something was being handed to him, and nothing in Dominion space was ever that convenient. "Full sensor sweep," he ordered. "Already running." "No," Rel said quietly. "Run it again." A pause. Then, "Yes, Captain." Deep space, false signature cluster 3. The ship drifted exactly the way a damaged vessel should. Heat signature unstable, drive output inconsistent, rotation slightly off axis. Every detail. Perfect. Because it wasn't real. Not entirely. But it didn't need to be. It just needed to be believable. Resolute dawn, command deck. Elias watched the Dominion vessel approach. Not directly, never directly. Through layers, reflections, signal echoes. He had split his presence across multiple false returns, each one carefully tuned. Most commanders would chase the closest target. Some would chase the strongest signal. The smart ones? They hesitated. "Let's see which one you are," Elias murmured. Dominion vessel, Vigilant Array. "Captain." Rel didn't look away from the screen. "Report. Signal fluctuation detected." "Explain." The sensor officer hesitated. "There are multiple returns." Rel's eyes narrowed. "How many?" 3. No, 5. The room shifted, subtle tension. "Ghosting?" someone suggested. Rel shook his head. No, because ghosting errors were messy, unstable, chaotic. This wasn't. This was clean. "Plot all trajectories," he said. The display expanded. 5 signals, each moving differently, each behaving like a real vessel. Impossible. Unless deliberate interference, Rel said. Silence, because that meant something very specific. This wasn't a survivor running. This was someone thinking. Resolute Dawn. Elias smiled slightly. There it is. He adjusted one of the false signals, just a fraction, enough to make it look like hesitation, fear, because predators recognized fear, and they followed it. Dominion vessel. Captain, one signal is slowing. Of course it was. Rel exhaled slowly. There, that was the one. Intercept that target, he ordered. The ship adjusted course, engines flaring slightly as it committed. Behind him, one of the officers relaxed. Got you, they muttered. Rel didn't respond, because something still felt wrong. Resolute Dawn. Elias watched the course correction. Predictable. He tapped a control. The false slowing ship flickered just for a microsecond, not enough to register as an error, just enough to introduce doubt. Dominion vessel. Captain, Rel raised a hand. I saw it. The flicker. Tiny, but real. Rescan all targets. Running. The officer stopped mid-sentence. Captain. Rel turned slightly. Report? All targets just shifted position. The display updated. 5 ships, now in different locations, not drastically, not impossibly, just enough to break a clean intercept path. Rel felt it then, clear, sharp. This wasn't interference. This was control. Whoever this is, he said quietly, they're not running. Verini Compact, listening post. Kira was watching everything, not officially, not through Dominion channels, through the cracks, the blind spots, the same old networks that had carried the human signal. She saw the Dominion vessel, saw its trajectory shift, then shift again. Her eyes widened. No way. Because she understood what was happening. This wasn't a chase. This was a test. Resolute Dawn. Elias leaned back slightly. All right. He reached for the next system. Not the signal array, not the deception net. Something deeper. Something he had only used in simulations. Let's raise the stakes. He activated it. Dominion vessel. Captain, new signal detected. Rel didn't react immediately. Where? Behind us. That got his attention. Explain. There's another ship. Rel turned fully now. Impossible. But the display didn't agree. A 5th signal. Close. Too close. Matching Dominion drive signatures. Matching ours, the sensor officer whispered. Silence. Heavy. Because that meant someone is spoofing our systems, Rel said, and doing it well, too well. Shut down external targeting immediately, he ordered. Manual verification only. The ship responded. Protocols shifting. Automation stepping back. Smart. Very smart. Resolute Dawn. Elias exhaled softly. Good. Because that confirmed it. This one wasn't careless. He adjusted the system again. The false Dominion signal intensified, moved closer, then split into 2. Dominion vessel. That's not possible. Nothing about this is possible, Rel snapped. But his mind was racing now, analyzing, adapting. Because now he understood. This wasn't about hiding. This wasn't about survival. This was a message. Deep space, signal network. Across dozens of hidden human vessels, the same realization spread. They weren't watching a survivor. They were watching someone in control. Resolute Dawn. Elias opened the channel. Direct. No relay, no disguise. The Dominion vessel froze, because now
There was no ambiguity. A human voice, clear, present. "Dominion vessel," Elias said calmly. "You're chasing the wrong target." Silence on the other end. Then, Captain Rel Tovan answered. "Identify yourself." Elias considered that. Names had weight, power, and after 27 years, this one mattered. "Commander Elias Rook," he said. A pause. Then, "Human fleet." Not a fleet, not yet, but close enough. Rel's voice came back slower this time, measured. "You are alone." Elias smiled slightly. "No," he said, and for the first time, he let a fraction of the network bleed into the channel. Not all of it, just enough. Voices, faint, layered. Dozens. Rel go completely still. Dominion vessel, command deck. No one spoke, because they all heard it. Not noise, not interference. People. Resolute dawn. Elias closed the channel. He didn't wait for a reply, didn't need one, because the message had already landed. He looked at the sensor map, at the Dominion vessel, now holding position, not advancing, not retreating, thinking. "Good," Elias said quietly. Then he set a new course, not away, not hidden, visible, because the next phase wasn't about being unseen anymore. It was about being impossible to ignore. And somewhere deep inside the Dominion, officials who had spent 30 years believing the past was buried were about to face something much worse than a survivor. They were about to face a return.
The Dominion could fight fleets. It could crush rebellions. It could erase civilizations. But this was something it had never learned how to handle. Exposure. Dominion High Council, emergency session. The chamber was sealed, not ceremonially, not publicly, sealed like something had gone wrong. Grand Arbiter Selvin Kale stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the projection suspended above the council floor. Audio logs, signal traces, verified, cross-confirmed, human voices, more than one, more than 10, more than enough. They transmitted on an open band, one council member said quietly. Not open, another corrected, unmonitored. That distinction no longer matters. Silence, because it didn't. They let us hear them, Selvin said. That was the part none of them liked. This wasn't a leak, it was intentional. They wanted witnesses, and witnesses created records. Verini Compact, Diplomatic Corps. Kira stood at the edge of the chamber, trying very hard to look like she belonged there. She didn't, not really. She was an observer, a signal analyst, a nobody until 3 hours ago. Now she was the one who had first confirmed the signal, and that made her useful. Representative Halloran of the Verini Compact stood before a bank of projection feeds, Dominion statements, independent relays, Covenant monitoring nodes, all carrying the same thing, fragments of the transmission, human voices layered together. Halloran didn't look pleased. He looked certain. "He cannot suppress this," he said. No one argued. "They will try," someone added. Halloran nodded. "Yes," he said, "but they are already too late." He turned slightly. "Prepare a formal inquiry." Kira's head snapped up. "On what grounds?" another official asked. Halloran didn't hesitate. "Violation of extinction classification protocols." The room stilled, because that was not a small accusation. That was a legal blade aimed directly at the Dominion's past. If even one human survived, then the resolution was not absolute. A pause. And if it was not absolute, he let the implication hang, because everyone in that room understood what came next. Then it might not have been legal. Dominion vessel, vigilant array. Captain Rel Tovan had not moved for nearly a minute. The command deck remained silent, not out of discipline,
out of uncertainty, because everything about this situation had just shifted. "You heard them," Rel said finally. No one responded. They didn't need to. Multiple human signals, coordinated, intentional. He looked at the sensor display again. The false signatures were still there, drifting, changing, watching him as much as he watched them. "This is not a survivor event," he said. That word again, event, because now this was bigger than a ship, bigger than a mission. This was something that would reach the council, the law, the record. "Orders, Captain?" his second asked carefully. Rel took a breath, then made a decision that would define the rest of his career. "Stand down." The room froze. "Captain? We are not engaging. We are observing." A pause. "Transmit to Dominion Command. Full report. No interpretation. Just facts." Because facts were dangerous enough on their own. Resolute dawn. Elias watched the Dominion ship stop. Not retreat, not attack. Stop. He nodded once. Smart. Because escalation would have been easy, predictable. But hesitation meant thought, and thought could be used. He opened a new channel, not to the Dominion, to the network. "All stations," he said quietly. The voices settled quickly now. They were learning. "Status check." Responses came in. "Operational. Still dark. No detection. Minimal output holding." Dozens of them, scattered across the void. Alive. Elias listened to every one, then spoke again. "They know now." No fear in his voice, just clarity. That was always going to happen. A pause. "What happens next," he said, "depends on how we move." Someone asked the question everyone was thinking. What do we do? Elias looked at the star map, at Dominion space, at the places they had claimed, built, expanded, over what used to be. He didn't finish that thought. "We don't fight," he said. That got attention. "We don't run either." Silence, because that left only one option. "We make it public." Dominion High Council. They are broadcasting again. Selvin didn't turn. Where? Everywhere. That word echoed, because it wasn't literal, but it was close enough. Independent relays, neutral systems, unaligned observers, all receiving the same thing, a signal, clearer this time, stronger, deliberate. Selvin finally looked up at the projection. Play it. The chamber filled with sound, static, then a human voice, calm, measured. "This transmission is a formal declaration." The room went still. "Species designation, Homo sapiens." Selvin's expression tightened slightly. "Status, active." A ripple moved through the council, because that word, active, was not just language, it was law. "We are in possession of verifiable population. We are operating under unified communication protocol." Selvin understood immediately what they were doing. They weren't asking, they were declaring. "We request recognition under Covenant statute governing surviving civilizations." Request, carefully chosen, because under Covenant law, a request like that could not be ignored, not legally, not publicly. "We will provide proof on formal inquiry." Of course they would. They had already proven enough. "This transmission is recorded." That was the final strike, because now this wasn't just a signal, it was a record, immutable, unavoidable. The voice paused. Then, "We are still here." The transmission ended. Verini compact. Halrin didn't smile, but his eyes shifted slightly. That was enough. File the inquiry. Kira felt it in that moment. Something changing, not slowly, not subtly, but fundamentally. The balance, the assumption that had defined the last 30 years, gone. Deep space, resolute dawn. Elias leaned back in his chair. The transmission was out.
No taking it back, no hiding now. Across the stars, the message would spread, and with it, a question the Dominion could not erase. If humanity still existed, what else about the past was wrong? He looked at the network again, at the ships, the voices, the people, no longer scattered, not yet united, but moving toward it. Phase 2, he said quietly, because this had never been about survival. That part was over. This was about something else, something bigger. Not revenge, not destruction, correction. And the Dominion, for the first time in 30 years, was no longer writing the record alone.
The galaxy did not react all at once. It never did. Change on that scale didn't arrive like an explosion. It spread, quietly, relentlessly. A question here, a flagged record there, a delayed transmission suddenly reviewed. And at the center of it all, one problem the Dominion could not solve. Humanity was not gone. Covenant Arbitration Chamber, neutral space. The chamber was not built for intimidation. That was intentional. No elevated thrones, no dramatic architecture, no advantage of position. Just a circular room, equal lines of sight, equal weight. Because this was not about power. This was about record. Elias Rook stood alone at one side of the chamber. No escort, no uniform beyond what remained of one long out of date. Across from him, Dominion representatives, layered in rank, precision, control. And above them, 3 Covenant arbiters, silent, watching. The session began without ceremony. "State your designation," one arbiter said. Elias didn't hesitate. "Commander Elias Rook," he said, "acting representative of the human species." A ripple, small but real, because saying it out loud made it official. The Dominion's lead legal voice stepped forward. "The Dominion recognizes this situation," they said carefully, "but contests the classification of an active civilization." Of course they did. Elias expected that. "You are presenting a fragmented remnant, unverified population, no centralized governance, no territorial continuity." All true. Every word. That was the strength of it. Because truth, twisted just slightly, became a weapon. Elias nodded once. "Correct," he said. That made them pause, because they expected resistance, argument, not agreement. "We are fragmented," he continued calmly. "We are distributed. We are operating without centralized infrastructure." He looked directly at them. "Because we were attacked." Silence. Not loud. Heavy. Because now they were in dangerous territory. Legal territory. "We did not collapse," Elias said. "We adapted." That word mattered. Adaptation meant survival. Survival meant status. Status meant rights. The arbiters exchanged a glance. The Dominion shifted slightly. They saw it too. Evidence phase. Elias didn't rush. He had spent decades preparing this. He activated the data stream, coordinates, signal logs, cross-confirmed transmissions. 31 independent human vessels, different regions, different timelines, all verified, all active. The chamber remained silent as the data unfolded, because it was undeniable, not emotional, not dramatic, just real. Dominion response. "You survived," the Dominion representative said slowly. Yes, Elias replied. Barely. Elias tilted his head slightly. That depends on your definition. Another pause. Because numbers weren't everything. Persistence mattered. Continuity mattered. Identity mattered. The turning point. The arbiter spoke again. Under covenant statute, they said, extinction classification requires total confirmed absence. A pause. Which has now been disproven. There it was. Small sentence. Massive consequence. The Dominion did not react outwardly, but something shifted. Deep. Structural. Ruling phase. The arbiters conferred. Not long. They didn't need to. The law was clear. It had always been clear. No one had expected it to matter again. Until now. The Covenant recognizes the human species as extant. Final. Absolute. Status. Active. Across the chamber, Dominion control fractured. Not visibly, but internally. Because everything built on that extinction, everything, was now in question. Aftermath. Immediate. Elias didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just stood there, still. Because this moment was not the end. It was the foundation. The Dominion representative spoke again. What are your terms? Not if. What? That was the real victory. Elias finally exhaled, then answered. Recognition, access to unclaimed systems, restoration of historical record, measured, precise, unavoidable, and accountability, he added. That last one hung in the air. Deep space, human network. The ruling spread faster than anything before it, because this time it wasn't a signal, it was law. Lena heard it first, then Felix, then Dar, then dozens more. 31 ships, 31 survivors. No, 31 beginnings. Resolute dawn. Elias returned to his ship in silence. No escort, no ceremony. He sat in the command chair, looked at the console. The same one he had used for 27 years. Same worn edges, same dim lights. Different future. The network opened automatically. Voices. Excited. Uncertain. Alive. What now? Someone asked. Elias looked at the star map, at empty systems, at possibilities. Then he said, "We build." Dominion, Internal Record Division. Archivist Leth Varan stared at the file. The same file. But now, it had changed. File, humanity, status, active. He read it twice, then once more, because this time, the archive had not made a mistake. It had been corrected. Final scene, the first world. The planet had no name. Not yet. Oceans, stable atmosphere, wide land masses, unclaimed. Elias stood in the cockpit as the ship descended. Behind him, 31 signals followed. Not close, not organized, but present, together. For the first time in decades, human ships were not hiding. They were arriving. He rested a hand on the console, looked out at the horizon, and for a brief moment, just a moment, he allowed himself to feel it. Not victory, not relief, something quieter, something deeper, continuation. He opened a channel. All stations, he said. The voices settled. We're home. Final line. The Dominion had written humanity into history, archived, closed, forgotten. But history only stays buried if no one comes back to correct it. And humanity never learned how to stay gone.